Hi everyone, Big Seven here, back for another episode of The Seven. Today I'm going to be covering premium defenders, and defense is a very interesting one this year because it looks like there are a number of decent mid-priced options like Elliot Yeo, Jack Bowes, Liam Jones, and it also looks like the majority of rookies are going to be that end up playing round one are going to be defender eligible. So it's going to be interesting to see how many of these premium defender types we end up with in our sides. I think there are a number of really solid options, and there might be some players that I miss out and that you might consider putting in, and that's fine. It's not like the forwards where it was more cut and dry. I think there is a bit of flexibility to go different in defense, but there also are just a number of solid, durable options that I think can be slotted in and that are fairly hassle free. So I've really the way I've kind of got it, I've got a top four and then a fifth option and then a couple of speculative ones. And the top four, these are all guys that are above 600k, and really all all really good solid options. And I'm splitting hairs really to rank them between one and four, just because I've got a guy ranked at one. I might not even start him in my side. I think these four are really solid options, and I'll start off with James Sicily, who I've got at one. And he's 20k more expensive than Stuart Doherty and Dawson, who are the other three that I have in that four. What I guess the thing I like about Sicily is that he's playing for the Hawks, and they are a side that have gotten significantly weaker over the off season. I wouldn't call it a tank, but it's definitely blooding the youth. And so, particularly that midfield, I expect to see the ball in the back half of Hawthorn's defense. So I think that gives James Sicily a case for even more upside. And about Sicily himself, came back from an ACL last year, did that emphatically, 113 average. He's still relatively young, so I think there's an argument to say that there is upside here. And I guess the only real downside I can think of is, well, I guess there's a couple of small downsides. One, he probably doesn't get as many kickouts as some of the other players, but I think that's offset through the Hawks really looking to go through him as a distributor when they're leaving defense anyway. So I don't see that as a big deal. He also gets a number of intercept marks which score very well. I guess the only other downside is the captaincy. We've seen for some players that captaincy means that they play a little bit more selfless and don't score as well. I'm not really worried about that for Sicily. I think he's a really solid option. If you can spare the 20k, then I've got him on top at the moment. But the other three, Stuart, Doherty, Dawson, all very solid. The player I've got at two at the moment is Doherty, and yeah, another player that's come back from adversity, had a history of knee injuries. I think didn't play for 3 years, and then had cancer as well, ankle injury in the past as well, hamstrings much earlier in his career. But he played the 22 games last year, and he's a player that Carlton really looked to get the ball in his hands. 109 average last year. There was talk he was going to play more midfield this year. I think that was more around Sam Walsh not expecting to play the first six or so rounds. It sounds like his recovery is going a bit better than expected. So maybe Doherty plays midfield at the start of the year and then reverts back to defence. Either way, whichever role he plays in, he will score well. He played a couple of games of midfield last year. They were obviously missing Hewitt at the back half or back few games of the year, and scored 120 plus in the two games where he did get a large amount of CBAs. So I like Doherty. He does have the injury history, but he will score well. The player I have at 3 is Jordan Dawson, another player that scored really well last year, moved across from Sydney to Adelaide and has become an integral part of that Adelaide side. They look to get the ball to him when possible. He takes intercept marks, gets kick-ins. Nothing really not to like about Dawson. I guess a small question mark, like Sicily. He's taken the captaincy this year. But Dawson, he's just another really solid option. The last player is Tom Stewart, and yeah, like I've said numerous times, these are the 4 that I just see as really solid, really splitting hairs to decide between them. Stewart, you can 109 average once like Doherty and Dawson last year. You can argue that's a little bit under what he should have been because he got injured against the Bulldogs, subbed out for a 30, I think it was, after one quarter. So really probably averaging, if you take that out, probably would have averaged 115-ish. I guess the small doubt you have with Stewart is he seems to just find a way to not play 22 games in a year. Last year he got suspended. He's had Liz Frank injury. Just seemed missed games with illness. And look, nothing really too worrying from an injury or personality kind of thing. I don't know, he just has a knack of missing games for silly reasons. I still think he's a very solid pick, fine to put in your side. I might end up with him. It's yeah, just has a knack for missing games. Still very solid though. Wouldn't talk anyone out of Stewart or for any of these 4 picks. So the 5th player I've got, and he's very highly owned, and that's Nick Decos. And again, I wouldn't be talking anyone out of Nick Decos. I have him at 5 just because for 100k more, you're getting a solid option that you know will score well. Nick Decos, he's a unicorn. Averaged 91 in his first season of football, and he did that. He looked very impressive when he played as well. The Pies were looking to get the ball in his hand. I don't see why that doesn't continue. Might play a bit more midfield time this year. I guess my small doubt around him is that teams might put a little bit of time into him this year. We saw in the practice match that Hawthorn sent Finn McGuinness to him. Nick Dacos still scored fairly well despite that as well. So I wouldn't be too discouraged by him if you were hot on him at the start of preseason. I wouldn't jump off him for the sake of one bad score. Like I said, I think the other 4 are a bit more solid, only for 100k more. But if you really need to save 100k, then I'm perfectly fine with going Dacos. I think he'll have his really good games. I just think he's still fairly young. I still think he'll have some of those 60, 70 games where it might be a little bit frustrating. So I've got him at 5. I can make an argument though that he needs to be selected. I think it all comes down to personal preference, and I guess I don't think he'll hurt me too badly if I don't start with him. So yeah, it's really those 5 that are the pool of defenders that I would consider selecting from. I'm personally more biased towards the solid 4. And then I guess the other couple of defenders, I think they're a bit more speculative, but I can see the case for upside. First one is Dan Houston. And amongst all of the defenders to finish top 15, I think him and Brayshaw were the only 2 that didn't have a significant amount of kick-ins. And we saw in the practice game that he split kick-ins with Ryan Burton rather than Burton having the majority. So I think there is a case for upside for Houston. But again, he's only 50k or 60k less expensive than picking like a Doherty or a Dawson or a Stewart, who we know are solid options. And I think there is a chance that Houston goes up to that level, but it's not secure. and there is an element of risk involved with him. Didn't score that well in the preseason game. I think if you are really hot on Houston, I wouldn't talk you out of the pick. But personally, I prefer the guys that are a bit more solid. And then the last player, I was really hot on him in preseason before the games were played, and so were a lot of other people, and that's Hayden Young. And look, there is no doubt in my mind that he will be a top six defender at some point in the future. I just don't think it's now. And the reasons for this, he was supposed to get more kick-ins this year. Going off the practice match, I think he got 4 out of the 13 kick-ins from opportunity, so it was a little bit of an increase from last year. So I think we can see a small bump in his score in terms of that. But really what I wanted to see was how Fremantle were going to play, whether they were going to use him as the main distributor out of halfback. And yes, he does get a decent amount of disposals, but it isn't like Sicily or Doherty or Dawson, Stewart, even Decos, where the team actively looks to get the ball in his hands. It's just not the case for Hayden Young at the moment. I could definitely, like I said, I think he's going to be a really good defender in the future. I just think it's a little bit too early. And the other thing is, we saw both of his preseason games without Luke Ryan, who, again, he's another distributor in that Freo backline. They've got, Luke Ryan, Jordan Clark, Nathan Wilson when he's fit. So I think with Hayden Young, just a few too many distributors in that back half at the moment, not getting enough kick-ins and probably not demanding the ball enough, and the team not looking to give him the ball enough. So those are the 7 premium defenders that I would consider choosing from. Realistically, it's really only the top 5 that I would consider putting in my side. I've got Sicily at the top at the moment. I mean, if you needed that 20K, I would definitely go for one of the other guys. It's like I said, really splitting hairs between the top 4. I think all of them are solid options, and we'll see how that goes. So, once again, thanks for watching. Next video will be the midfielders, and I look forward to seeing you for that. Thanks for watching.